Hi, everyone. Nice to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of your program.
Yes, absolutely. And we are truly appreciative that you're stopping by because, again, so many of us have
Yes.
experienced these changes in the
Yep.
workplace.
Yep.
And, it might seem like we don't know if we're coming or if we're going anymore. So
Right.
I'm happy that you're here as a human resource specialist
Yes.
to kind of guide us through this very challenging time. So let me just read a little bit about who you are and then we will jump right into the conversation.
Sounds good.
Good. So Shanika was born in Dominica and she attended the convent high school. Upon graduating, she migrated to Maryland. She holds a master's degree in liberal studies and a strong focus in human resource management. She has been practicing human resources for over 10 years and she is a senior HR operations generalist. So as a human resource specialist, I think you've just seen how everything has been changing. And one of
Right.
the things that you mentioned is that human resources has now changed from being transactional to
Right.
transformational.
Right.
So I want you to tell us a little bit more about that. But before we do, kind of
Yeah.
just tell us more about who you are, where you
Oh,
grew up, your
sure.
transition to the States, some challenge you may have faced. You've seen the program, you know what we do.
Okay, so as Simone said, my name is Shanica Hamilton. And, when I think about who I am, I cannot not think of my father. My father passed away 2 years ago, but he was really the person who introduced me to business. Daddy managed one of the biggest stores in Roseau. It was called By Trini. That's where everybody got their latest outfits and their clothes. But you know what? The most interesting part of that was people who worked there remembered him for his kindness, remembered him for the good time, remembered him for something else, whether it was because he gave them an opportunity to work there, to model. I mean, I have so many people who still meet me when I go to different Dominican functions, and they would say, I remember your dad, he gave me an opportunity to model or work at By Trini. And so that sort of led me into the space of business. So when I came to the States in long time ago, I won't date myself. Um, I focused, my undergraduate was really in business administration. And it was more in the space of marketing because I thought, oh, I want to do marketing. But still, my journey still steered me into human resources. So I wanted to understand what made the business function. Besides the dollars and cents, there was that piece of the business that needed to be understood, which was the human piece, the human capital. And I really honed in on that. And ever since I graduated, my journey has taken me in human resources. And I've seen where, from working in HRIS, doing the basic data entry, putting people into the system, and so forth, my journey changed, right? It changed from being very transactional to, hey, we need our people to be happy. We need to move this change. We have some objectives and we need people to have buy-in. And the human resources team now is responsible or part of the human resources team has to support managers to make that change. And so I fell into that. I loved it. I started realizing I was really good at it. And this is where this is where I'm thriving. So when the opportunity came up that, hey, you know what, I could really talk about some things that are changing in human resources, from it being very transactional, very sort of, put this data in, to transformational. How is the culture? What is the culture like? Do we need to do a culture change? Do we need to do a temperature check on the culture? Post COVID, those kinds of conversations started happening more and more, more and more. And a lot of buying was needed from HR and how HR was going to support the managers to get the employees to, to go along. That was a very long intro, but
Oh no, wonderful, wonderful. And I was listening to you, but it also gave me an opportunity to share the live with everyone who might be
yes,
interested in being a part of the conversation.
yeah,
So thank you for that. So let's kind of talk about what business and human resources looked like before COVID-19. So
uh-huh.
you said it was a lot of transactional. So I'm assuming that you meant it involved like job applications, orienting employees to the workplace, just the more transactional approaches. But now, tell us, what do you mean by transformational? Because it sounds like it has a lot more to do with like conflict resolution,
Right.
setting goals. So just kind of tell us, what are the changes you've seen along the way?
So pre-COVID and post-COVID, human resources was really going on that path of transformation. We were working to get folks to move or to change the organization, or change the organization in a more culture friendly way, right? So once COVID happened, the bottom line or objectives still remain. You still needed to meet your financial goals. However, we saw that there were less people to do the jobs, right? And the conversation started, how do we now move from having, instead of 10 people to do a job, you now have five? How do I get that person to buy into the idea that you have more work, right? You have more responsibilities. How do I get you to buy into that idea? We started thinking of job sharing, right? We started having some true, robust conversations about, you know, where we are and how to build trust with our staff. I actually, I'll tell you a little bit about in terms of how I moved some thought processes into building, more sort of goal setting, and how I created conversations around transition, and dealing with staff with fear towards transition. And it really was a very true conversation. People do not like change. No one really likes change. People think that once they hear the word change, it's something horrible that's going to happen. But believe it or not, everybody really loves change. You change your hairstyle, you change, the fashion industry changes every year or every 3 months. So everybody does like change. However, some of the things that people really have a hard time with is thinking that they're not going to fit in to this new change, this new paradigm, right? People are sort of fed up with that change because they feel like, is the change real or is the change phony, right? Most people don't understand how to accomplish the outcome. And human resources has to have that conversation, or has to support the managers to have that conversation. We have to literally show people that there are positive outcomes, there are negative outcomes, and there is a space where that change has to come into that interesting phase where you begin to see, hey, you know what? I can tell you all the reasons why I don't want this to change. But maybe after a while, we can start saying, hey, maybe some of those changes will lead to some positive outcomes. And then you move into the third phase, which is sort of like the creative outcome, where you begin to be interested. Well, maybe the change is not so bad. Maybe the change wasn't so bad that we now have to work from home, right? Because now I can pick up my children
Mm-hmm.
quicker.
Or you
I
can help
can,
them with homeschooling.
right. Or
Mm-hmm.
maybe right now it is not so bad that I can work from home because I can be in my PJs, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's, why do we have to work from home now? Who's paying for my mileage? All of those things. Am I getting compensated for the mileage that I used to, be able to get before? No,
Mm-hmm.
but here's what. No, the positive is, you can now stay home. You now don't
Mm-hmm.
have to deal with rush hour traffic. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, but the U.S., we can have some really bad traffic. We can be
Right.
in traffic for about an hour and a half. And, some people just are comfortable with the status quo, and people are really scared to move into that phase of the unknown. They don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
human resources really we really had to have those conversations. And I'm stepping away from the goal setting piece, because I really want people to understand, before we even set goals, we have to understand where people are,
Mm-hmm.
because they are human and we're dealing with a human issue. It's not
Mm-hmm.
just moms or dads, it's a human issue. And the information that I'm giving you, you can apply that to your personal life, you can
Mm-hmm.
apply it to your work life, you can
Mm-hmm.
apply it wherever you go. And
And I'm really, just to interject, I'm really happy we're having this conversation because again, the world has changed for so many of us,
yeah,
and I'm looking
yeah,
forward to engaging with the audience to find out exactly how
yeah,
things have changed for them,
yeah,
what has changed at their workplace, what is a happy change for them,
yeah,
and what is a not so happy change for them, just what they're struggling with. We
right,
have a human resource specialist with us today, everyone. So bring your questions, bring your
yes.
concerns. One of the things that you mentioned, Shanika, and before we do, let's just say good evening to everyone who's joining us
Hello,
on the
everyone.
Facebook Live. We have Beverly Johnson, Sharon Dorabel, and I think I saw Sabria earlier on. So thank you for being here, and feel free to ask your questions. Now, one of the things you mentioned, Shanika, is just in terms of change, more work.
Yeah,
And I think that is something a lot of people are struggling with,
yeah,
even if they have not been downsized, where you explained from 10 to 5 people, from 5 employees, but just working from home.
yeah,
I think that people are having to do more work because I'm hearing about, individuals working longer hours and not being compensated for that. So let's just kind of talk about that.
I have heard that.
Yes,
That
it's a
is going to
challenge.
it's going to be a challenge. So we can either
Hmm.
look from the employer standpoint, or we can look from the employee standpoint. From the employee standpoint, you're frustrated, right? And you almost want to say, well, I'm going to go to HR. Hey, I have been working 5 people's jobs and I'm not getting compensated.
Hmm.
I would, if I were in anybody's shoes who was obviously feeling in that way, I would definitely have a true conversation. What I have done in the past is, when I have staff members who come to me and say, well, I've been working 5 jobs and my manager is not paying me, I literally list the types of jobs they think that they're doing. I ask them to, write out literally everything that they've been doing and give it to me. And so we three, manager, employee, and myself, would have a conversation. What does this job look like? Is there another role that the person can fit in? Um, you know, and I believe that people have to advocate for themselves, right? So a lot of times people feel, I will just complain to human resources. No, a part of that is you're responsible for telling me, or to bring forth the roles that you think that you're doing. Because a lot of times some people think that they're doing a lot, but sometimes it's not. But then
Hmm.
sometimes it is. So if someone writes down what they think that they're doing, then we can have a robust conversation with the manager. So that is one of the things that I would do, or I would advise the employee to do. From the employer standpoint, if you have a situation where you have in a lot of your staff members that are obviously working 5, 6 jobs, you want to look at that and see whether it's time to bring in assistance from either a recruiting company who can come in and support, send out 2, 3 temporary staff to support your mission. Because at the end of the day, you have financial objectives. We all have financial objectives, right? So maybe not having someone join in the firm for, permanently, but you can have some temporary staff help. So those
Hmm.
are just two options from the employee standpoint and from the employer standpoint.
Yeah,
Any more
absolutely. And
questions? Yeah.
yes, yes, that makes sense. And Mr.
Mm-hmm.
Gordon Henderson just joined our live. So good evening, sir. I hope it's
Good
not
evening.
morning in France. in Paris. So thank you for being up late with
Yes.
us to be a part of this conversation. Now we talk about people working from home, Shanika, and let's just talk about the challenges and the benefits that many are experiencing right now.
Yeah.
Because like you said, it's a great opportunity to be able to work in your pajamas. And, I enjoy the benefits. I've been working from home for the last 13 years. So I certainly know the benefits. But there's also some really tough drawbacks from
Yeah.
working from home: isolation,
Mm-hmm.
not being motivated to work,
Right.
procrastination.
Right.
So let's just talk about, some of the challenges and difficulties of working from home.
So from the employer standpoint, I think it's very important if you're going to have a team work from home, you want to make sure that you outline expectations, right? You can't just expect people to work from home and say, oh, go forth and work from home without some sort of, these are your expectations. This is the equipment that you can take. Some employees I've heard where someone said, can I bring my chair from work? It sounds very funny, but there,
Wait, hold on. They wanted to
yes,
take the chair from the office?
yes. But here's what, from an HR standpoint, if that person has a medical condition on
Mm.
file, then they can bring their chair out of the
Yes.
home,
Yeah, I'm
right?
just trying to figure out how would they actually bring the chair. It probably need a pickup truck
That's
or
why you
something.
need HR. So do you see
Yes.
where HR is now moving from the transactional to the transformational?
Hmm.
Because if it's someone who doesn't know that, then you would say, what? No, ma'am, you cannot bring your chair home.
Right.
But from an HR standpoint, we are very much aware of the rules.
Hmm.
And if that person falls under the ADA, which is the American Disability Act, then that person can very well take their chair home.
Wow.
Um,
Interesting.
yeah, yeah. So I've
Hmm.
seen a lot of that.
Hmm.
Um, from the employee standpoint, if you notice that you're experiencing boredom or depression, most companies have an employee assistance program, and if they
Hmm.
don't have it, they need to have it,
Hmm.
because what that will do outside of HR, that entity is there to support your staff when they're having financial, emotional, any sort of issue. That entity or that group is there to support the staff,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. Yeah, now let's talk about isolation because I think
Yeah.
a lot of people, I have this one particular friend, she's single, she has no children,
Mm-hmm.
and she works from home. And she
Yeah.
says it's so difficult to be motivated each and every day because she's so isolated. She's missing human interaction. So let's just talk about the importance of taking a break from work, stepping outside, still finding a way to connect
Oh
to
gosh,
to
you
humans.
do.
And before we do, let's say good evening to Herbie and Dave Bertrand, who's saying good morning from the UK. So,
Oh, hello,
Dave,
hello,
thank you for being
everyone.
up late to be with us this evening. Good morning to you.
So for me, I come from a place of intention. We've chatted before, so you've gotten a glimpse of who I am. Regardless of whatever I do, there is intention. And so with COVID, I'll tell you my personal story. This is not HR, but my personal story is COVID came, it shut everything down, but there was a taekwondo place that was open, and I got myself into taekwondo, and I'm on my
Yes, you
second
told
belt.
me. You
Yes,
told
I'm
me.
on my, I mean, you do things with the intention of finding that chi, finding that spirit, finding that connection. And sometimes it just takes that one step of stepping outside, talking to
Mm-hmm.
someone. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's a mask. It's
Mm-hmm.
just a mask, but you are the
Mm-hmm.
same person inside. And
Mm-hmm.
again, with change, that's why it's so critical that we have this conversation, because
Yes.
change is not only happening outside us, change is
Mm-hmm.
happening inside of us,
Right.
right? And whatever inside of us is the manifestation of what we see, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think for me, one of the things that you can definitely do for yourself, if you're going through this sort of isolation, you want to write down all of the things that you're grateful for. I
Mm.
am grateful
Well, I'm
Start to
grateful
put
for work, number one, because a lot of people have
exactly,
lost their jobs. So number one
exactly,
should be I'm grateful for life. Number two should be I'm grateful for work.
right, right. Write down that. Have a gratitude journal. Um, and this is something that I say to my staff. We talk HR. I can tell you some of the, I quoted ADA and all of those things, but there is a humanness that has to happen. And I tell
Mhm.
people, what are you grateful for? This is change, but you have to anchor in something that's positive, something that's good, and
Mhm.
from that you work through human resources. That's my core, and that's my anchor, and that's why I
Mhm.
would have been successful at what I've done, because I have my intentions and I have my gratitude journal. I'm not just speaking to you. I have my board, so I said my intentions, and you have to say those intentions, whether you're locked in or you're working from home or you're working in the office. I have not stopped working in the office because my change has to be face to face. I have to
Right.
see what my team is doing. I have to be involved in a lot of the leadership meetings.
Mhm.
And I have to have those tough conversations, unfortunately. And so
Mhm.
the reality is, if someone is feeling like they are going through that depression stage, right? The truth of it, if you don't find help, right? Let's have a tough conversation. If you don't find
Mhm.
help and you don't address or say that you're having a difficult time, what will happen is you will get written up or you will get
Mm.
fired.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
just that simple, right? So
Mhm.
get help or get fired,
Right.
right?
Yeah, and I'm so happy we're having this conversation. And Sam Hale is on the live. He's actually the manager of TDN Radio, who is, so technically he's my boss at TDN Radio. So I'm going to be
Hello.
on my best behavior here. So good evening, Sam. And of course, we want to thank TDN Radio for sponsoring our Facebook Lives, because we
Right.
use their platform for our Facebook Live program. So certainly thank you to TDN Radio and Sam for stopping by. Now I'm so happy we're having this conversation, because there's so many implications for so many people.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was announced recently is that New York City has requested that all the city employees return to the office.
Hmm.
And I'm just wondering, what are the HR implications if people do not feel
Hmm.
that it will be in their best interest to go
Hmm.
back to the office, but it is mandated by the city that they
Hmm.
return to work. So I
Yeah.
can imagine the HR department is going to be very busy
Oh yeah.
for many different divisions of New York City.
Oh yeah. I can only imagine, and I can only imagine. But
Mm-hmm.
here is what they should do. If they have a consistent message, which is they're already addressed. Hey, you know what? We need you back. We need you back into the office. We need your service. That is step number one. With change, again, what we're talking about, take a step back and I'll tell you about a turbulent flight. I don't like flying. I am in Florida
Mm-hmm.
on vacation with my family, but flying is not one of the things that I really like. But if the pilot or the stewardess says, you know what, we're going to experience some turbulence, please stand by, then that makes me feel a little bit comfortable when the turbulence happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of managers or even business owners or employers, first step, and with New York City, is stating, hey, this is what is going to happen, but address that people are going to feel uncomfortable with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in terms of the next step, it definitely would be to just to have that conversation. Let people vent because
Mm-hmm.
they will.
And also, I
And
think what would help. I think what will help as well is just to emphasize the safety protocols.
right.
What are the safety protocols that will be in place? Because let's face it, all over the U.S., we're seeing that the number of the virus is significantly declining. But someone like me, I still follow all the safety protocols. So
You
I
still
think,
do.
yes,
You still
and I've had the
absolutely
first
do.
vaccine, and I'm still going to continue following
I
the protocols even after the second vaccine.
right. I've been fully vaccinated. But
Mm-hmm.
before I was fully vaccinated, I came to the office every single day. And
Mm-hmm.
you practice protocol, like you said. You cover your face, you
Mm-hmm.
sanitize your hands, you have social
Mm-hmm.
distance. HR, I'm telling you from my personal experience, I was scared. because
I can
people come into
imagine.
your office to complain all the time.
Yeah.
And COVID or no COVID, someone is going to come into your office. So I think, if the transition happening is going to make HR probably freak out, not because
Mm-hmm.
of the complaints, but we are very much aware that once people come back into the office, they're going to be in our space. They're going to
Mm-hmm.
come back and ask questions. Um, and at the end of the day, people want to know that how is this change going to affect me,
Mm-hmm.
right? What can I do to to avoid the change? But the manager or the employer now needs to showcase, hey, you know what, if you buy into this change, this is what will happen. So this is
Mm-hmm.
the journey, but this is the outcome, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's really the idea. Nobody wants to feel like they were um, a part of something that was fake, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're bringing people back, but people are going to get sick. Nobody wants to be a part of that. But
No.
people
Mm-hmm.
want to feel that they're safe through this transition, and they want to be a part of something that is good. So if you
Mm-hmm.
show outcomes, if you show success stories, then people will buy into that change. And that's
Mm-hmm.
where my marketing comes in to my HR.
Right, right. That first degree that you had. Yeah, so if you're just joining us, we're speaking to Shanica Hamilton. She's an HR specialist, and we're just walking through the changing face of business, the changing face of work. And we're enjoying this conversation about all the implications of coronavirus. And now that coronavirus is going away, what are the implications? And
Yep,
for
yep,
Shanika,
yep.
for some people, this is a permanent change
Yeah.
because I have to tell you, for example, my brother is
Hmm.
permanently going to be working from home now.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's the good news. You know
Yeah.
what's the bad news? Opportunities for advancement when you're not working in front of the boss. I actually read an
Yeah.
article which indicated
Mm-hmm.
that those folks who have gone and are now fully working from home,
Mm-hmm.
it is going to be less opportunity for them to be visible in
Mm-hmm.
front of their bosses, and it may affect their opportunities for advancement. What are
You know,
your
I
thoughts on
I
that?
don't believe that. I don't believe that
Okay,
because it's again your intention.
right.
You set your intention for the work that you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
There is not that water cooler, but you certainly can have those
Yes.
vibrant conversations. There are
Mm-hmm.
leadership meetings that you can still be a part of. There is still
Right.
input that you can contribute to. You certainly can be a part of those robust conversations. So I don't believe that
Mm-hmm.
it diminishes.
Your
You're not
ability.
physically there, but
Mm-hmm.
remember the whole world has changed. Right now people are on this global platform, so people are looking for information via some sort of Zoom or
Mm-hmm.
FaceTime or whatever other platforms there. So people have to make themselves visible one way or the other. So I don't
Yeah,
buy
I
into
think
that.
absolutely I agree
Hmm.
with you because
Yep.
yes, you may not have the water cooler moments where people sort of congregate and talk
Hmm.
about the weekend, and
Yeah.
that's how people get to know you in terms
Hmm.
of your personality, and that helps with advancement.
Hmm.
But you have the opportunities to be on Zoom calls, and
Yeah.
it's up to you to speak up
Right.
when you're on those calls,
Right.
to also dress for the calls, because you
Right.
might be thinking that you're from home and you're going to dress very casually, but your boss is looking at you.
Right. And
So
how
it,
many, and it happens like when I'm on Zoom calls, many times I'm on Zoom calls in my office and I look at the executive team. So I work with an organization that has multiple agencies all over the US. So
mhm,
I'm in Silver Spring, Maryland, but we have offices in Michigan, we have offices in California, we have offices in Florida, Philadelphia. So I'm on a Zoom call with everybody,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
And
mhm,
many times, I remember when my boss at that time, she said, "I want everybody to be on video now." We were like, "What video? Why?" But there was a push, right? I want you to be ready for this conversation. I want you to be fully present for this conversation. Again, to managers, There are ways that you can motivate. There are ways that you can engage your staff. If you're
Mm-hmm.
going to constantly have conversations on just voice, then how are you motivating your staff? Because
Right.
part of the reason why your staff is maybe not really working so hard, part of it is you. What are you
Mm-hmm.
doing? What resources are you providing to your staff to encourage them to show up, to
Mm-hmm.
be present for that conversation?
Mm-hmm.
Um, what are the expectations that you're setting? If you set no expectations, if you do not itemize what you expect, then how are people going to follow? Or how
Mm-hmm.
can you hold people accountable, right?
Right.
So I think, going back to your statement about New York City, I think those are some of the things that New York City really has to put in place.
Mm-hmm.
Begin to list. And one of the things about organizational change, you can look at it in two ways. You can look at it as structural change, where you change who the reporting structure, if you will. You no longer report to the manager, you now report to the director.
Mm-hmm.
That's all well and good. But if you have not tapped into the cultural change,
Mm-hmm.
then you are at a complete loss. COVID has shown us that if you do not tap into the cultural change, you are
Mm-hmm.
nowhere,
Absolutely,
right?
and we have comments coming in, so I'm happy to see that we have contributions to the discussion. Adelaide Joseph said I still follow all the safety protocols, and I have been fully vaccinated for months.
Congratulations.
Absolutely, I could not agree more. Sam Hill says, how would you handle employees who refuse to follow safety protocols when they're back in your physical space? Very good question, Sam.
Great
Thank you for that
question.
question.
Right. So one of the things, remember, I mentioned that we need to make sure we have cultural change, and that is part
Mm-hmm.
of the culture. Our expectations are XYZ. And if you do not follow those expectations, then this is what the next step is going to be. We're going to have a conversation. And
Mm-hmm.
usually, when you say from a manager, we're going to have a conversation, that conversation is usually through coaching or
Mm-hmm.
a written documentation in your file that says you have not followed XYZ policy. I think for managers or owners or directors, begin to write policies. Sometimes a policy depends on the organization, has to go through the board has to sign off. Begin to, I mean, you should have done that a long time ago, right? But
Mm-hmm.
let's
Mm-hmm.
just say
Mm-hmm.
you have not. For the case of this situation, you have not done your policies and you've not done your procedures. If you think that maybe, well, the policy might take too long to go through the board, it may take 2 months because the board meets once a quarter or once a month or whatever, write a procedure.
Mm-hmm.
Our procedure is XYZ. Most boards don't care too much about procedures. I shouldn't say don't care, but it doesn't go through the same process. You can tell I've done this a while. So write a procedure. This is the procedure, and these are the ramifications. I hope I answered
Mm-hmm.
your question.
Yes, I think you did. Sam, I hope you got an answer to your question. Now we have Sharon Dorival, and she says, I didn't have to stay home because I work in the healthcare industry,
Ah,
but I
yes.
realized that there were more wholesome connections made during COVID. It
Yeah.
is heartbreaking that so many people lost their jobs. There might be a rise for the need for mental health first. So she's talking
Yeah.
about the need for mental health intervention because many people are suffering in silence.
Yeah, yeah. So I work in healthcare as well.
Mm-hmm.
I've been working in healthcare most of my career. And to be honest with you, I have seen the collaboration, the camaraderie, the instead of bringing a cake, you bring like small cupcakes to the office so
Mm-hmm.
that everybody can have a cupcake individually sealed. I've seen that. I've
Yes.
experienced it. There's so much you can still do. You can live a very good life, a very good office life, safely with your colleagues. But you
Mm-hmm.
have to set protocols and you have to set expectations.
Absolutely.
Because I can
So
tell you, I
true.
have a good time with my colleagues. We have meetings. I am the one that will say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, social distance, please do not sit next to me.
Mm-hmm.
But we're all vaccinated, but we still practice, our distance. We still cover our faces.
Mm-hmm.
We still do what we're supposed to do because we have our families to take care of, right?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and so I believe part of that, in terms of allowing people to follow protocols, is to empower them to follow protocols.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you nominate someone or you do some sort of employee engagement, right?
Yes,
Hint, hint,
yes,
right now,
yes,
that is
yes.
something that most companies should start focusing on.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that's where HR comes in. We talk really robustly about engagement. We try to support the managers to really support their colleagues during this time
Mm-hmm.
because you have
Mm-hmm.
to. People are
Yeah.
looking for that support.
And Al Charles said he's just saying hi to
Hello,
Shanika
Al.
Mitchell Hamilton. He's calling all your names, Shanika. And
Hi, Al.
we have a question from Cleo Watt.
I
She
remember
asked,
Al from way back.
as
Nice to
Cleo
see you,
asked,
Al.
can you kindly expound on the point you made about cultural change?
Uh-huh.
How do you manage this? So again, thank you everyone on the Facebook Live for
Yeah.
submitting questions to our discussion. So how do you manage cultural change during this crisis?
Oh gosh. So cultural change is not so much, we're Dominican and, now it's moving to another, American culture. No.
Yes.
Cultural change is what type of expectations. So if the expectation was, I'm just going to be very casual here. If the expectations were everybody sort of suited up to come
Mm-hmm.
into the office because everybody was very formal. Now people are being more relaxed. There's hardly anyone in the office. People are wearing shorts to come to the office, some places. Some people are coming with sundresses. That's a cultural change, and I'm being very
Mm-hmm.
casual about it. But that is one thing, just showing people that, our culture, our environment is no longer that formal environment. Another change could simply be we we had a merger. Now we are adopting new initiatives or new processes from another company. We are now merging thoughts. We're now merging practices or business practices. That is what I mean by cultural change. Does that make sense?
It does. And
Yeah.
Herbie Jack chimed in. He says, "Is there an HR element that can be factored in when it comes to the customers coming into a store, business place, and refuse to adhere to safety protocols such as mask wearing? So protecting your employees if customers refuse to wear a mask, does that fall under HR as well? Is that
It
something
doesn't
HR
really.
can
It
create a
doesn't
policy
really.
for?
It doesn't really fall under HR, but one of the things
Hmm.
is, employees might complain. I feel
Hmm.
unsafe in this environment. So
Hmm.
how can the manager begin to support
Yeah, the
their
manager,
team?
because you would have to report to the manager.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
the
yeah.
manager might definitely feel that, hey, you know what? I'm getting a lot of my staff complaining that they feel uncomfortable. And so how do
Hmm.
I begin to support? So what I would probably do, I would have signs posted. Again, I believe in making sure that the expectations are very clear in black and
Hmm.
white, and you're allowing or you're empowering. Notice those words. You're
Yes.
empowering your team to say, and give them the script, right? Give them the words that they should use. Sometimes people struggle with words, right? We are not
Hmm.
sure how we should say, ma'am, you're not to enter the store without a mask.
Hmm.
Instead of, I'm Dominican. Instead of saying, don't come there, you know.
You know, we talk. But I
But
think
that's
that's
so
even I think
exactly.
that's even more challenging now, because to keep these protocols in place where a lot of people will now say, well, I've been vaccinated, so what is the big issue? It's going to be a fight, because if the store still has that policy in place and people are arguing, well,
No,
what was the point of me getting vaccinated if I still have to
that
wear a mask? They'll bring that argument to the store,
and that's not the place. Again,
right?
creating, providing your team with. So let's take a step back. Okay,
Hmm.
so team, this is our staff meeting. So you had these issues happen. Okay, what was one, what was two, what was three. Okay, these are some of the things that we can do as a team now to support each other when this
Mm-hmm.
happens. This is
Right.
the script that we can begin to tell customers. These are the
Mm-hmm.
signs that are going to be posted around the office or the space,
Mm-hmm.
or the business. It's outside
Mm-hmm.
as well as inside. This is, this is the calm. We're calm. We are respectful, but
Rational.
we're also very firm. And being
Yes.
nice doesn't mean that you have to be
Yes.
soft, but you can be nice and firm. So it's
Mm-hmm.
allowing people, providing people the script and the support. And also, so here's what, Mr. Manager, when you notice that your team is really doing a really good job, you
Mm-hmm.
recognize them. Guys, I just want to let you know you really did a good job this week. I know it was tough, and I know you've gone through a lot
Yeah.
of a hard time, but I
Mm-hmm.
do want to thank you for your week, for your hard time, for going through with this project with me. Um, I think thank you is a powerful two-letter
Absolutely.
sentence. You know,
Absolutely.
there is um, a very, very good acronym that I really love, and it's called AIDIT. I don't know if you've ever heard of AIDIT. I have been
Mm-mm.
in healthcare, so I know. And there is a process when you meet someone and you engage with them, and that process itself really has some measurable outcomes in the way that you experience a customer or a client. And
Mm-hmm.
AIDIT actually stands for A, for acknowledge. You acknowledge someone. You say, well, I see you. You acknowledge them. You
Yes.
introduce
Good
yourself. This is
morning.
the I, right?
Mm-hmm.
The I is for introductions. And
Mm-hmm.
then for the D is usually duration, in terms of if you're seeing a patient, or somebody's going to come to you for some sort of service. So you tell them, hey, you know what? I know this is going to take some time, but this is what we're going to do. We're going to do this and this process, right? The E is for explanation. You're going to actually explain to them the process that is happening, and explain to them how long it's going to take. Explain to them what, probably what the setbacks might be, or why the wait is going to be so long. Or explain to them, hey, you know what? You cannot come into our office without a mask. And
Right.
T, at the end of it, you still say thank you. I'm sorry you're not able to come into our office, but thank you for, supporting our business. We do
Mm-hmm.
appreciate you. Do you see what I'm saying? So the
Yes.
conversation
Beautiful.
now has to
Beautiful.
change. We cannot
Mm-hmm.
think that they are doing something to us. You have to
Mm-hmm.
think about it in they're not aware, right? So how
Mm-hmm.
can we change the mindset?
Mm-hmm.
Again,
Oh, very
finish.
well said. Very well said. And I'm just here thinking how we can just apply that to so many
Oh yeah.
businesses
Oh yeah.
in terms of just in improving the overall experience, not just for the customer, but for the employee, because
Yeah.
you already have a script. You know what is
Yeah.
the next thing that you're
Exactly.
supposed to be engaging in
Yeah.
with the customer in front of you. So we
And
have
this is
Ross.
measurable. This is measurable.
Yes,
I
yes.
mean, Studer was the one that coined this acronym, and this is
Mm-hmm.
some measurable outcomes. Actually, this is used in the hospital system in the US.
Mm-hmm.
And the outcomes are, you can tell that people now have a buy-in in terms of, if a nurse comes to someone to say, you know, this is how long, or this is the medication that you're going to take, and this is what the medication is going to do for you, X, Y, and Z. That person now wants to be a part of this process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm
Mm-hmm.
showing you that you cannot do change
Mm-hmm.
pre-COVID without
Mm-hmm.
buying, and that's what human resources does. At least that's what
Yeah.
the type of human resources that I buy into. We
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
provide change, and we
Yeah.
have to
Good
do it from a
stuff.
transformational standpoint.
Yeah. Good stuff. And Rosalind is on the live and she says, what preparations are in place to receive employees returning to work? So I think we talked about that, having the safety
Mm-hmm.
protocols in place
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
and ensuring that there's a process, a policy
Yeah.
to ensure that this one is willing to follow it, but this one is not, and just how that is going to all work together. And Indigenous Bushman says, good evening. Hi,
Good evening.
Cyril, how are you?
And don't be scared to have those difficult conversations.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
have to have that difficult conversation, especially if you have a procedure or a policy in place, especially when
Mm-hmm.
you have outcomes. Because guess what? The CEOs and the CFOs, they have outcomes and they expect you to hit those outcomes with
Mm-hmm.
staff that can produce those outcomes.
Hmm.
Right?
Well, I'm so happy we're having this conversation, and the time is quickly ticking by, and
Oh
I
my
just want to make
goodness.
sure that we get in at least one other question before we wrap up this evening, and that is, what are some of the resources that we may not be aware of that may benefit us that we can contact human resources about? Because sometimes we get so bogged down in the job that we don't even look at the orientation package they give us because we're so excited to get the job.
Oh,
And then we put it there and we say, we're going to look at it, and it's 5 years later and we don't. So just kind
right.
of tell us some of the benefits that we may not have considered that human resources may be able to provide for us. And I think I like that you mentioned the employee assistant one, because
Yep.
that is such an important resource, especially in terms of mental health,
Yep.
where you
Yep.
can get
Yep.
counseling services as
Right.
part of your human resource, as part of your package at work.
Right. So with me and the business that I do, the work that I do, I help companies really structure what the expectations are, what a human resources um, department should look like. Yes, we have the procedural piece. I actually look at human resources in three different ways, three pieces, if you will. As much as it's very transformational, we still look at the administrative piece of HR, we look at the operational piece of HR, and we look at the strategic piece of HR, right? And so, um, in terms of making sure we have all the resources that we can provide to staff, the employee assistance program definitely is a very strategic
Oh, very good.
initiative because
Mm-hmm.
it supports our staff. It really provides, and it actually, the data has shown that it really does help staff. I have heard some horror stories, right? I've heard where
Mm.
some nurses or some, staff were on the brink of committing suicide. Yeah, this is what I've been experiencing in HR. So
Wow.
providing that is so key. Not because you're in healthcare means everybody's super strong. People are
Right.
vulnerable. People
Right.
are not well. People
Mm-hmm.
need help, right? So providing some sort of employee assistance program is key. Also, look at your benefits. Maybe if you in your benefits, there may be mental health. There may be some
Mm-hmm.
support in your benefit package that is not really evident, or the HR person didn't talk to you about, or the benefits person didn't talk to you about, or your manager didn't talk to you about. Whoever it is that just delivers those sort of information. I think those two are really important in terms of
Mm-hmm.
what HR can provide. And also, I think, we all have bonds and friendships at work, but if you have an HR person who you trust, who you believe can provide that support, especially if that person is like an HR business partner or an HR director, and you feel like you can talk to that person and share what your concerns are carefully,
Mm-hmm. Because you're still
right?
at work.
Because you're still in the office.
Mm-hmm.
I would almost strongly suggest that you speak to someone in HR rather than go speaking to everybody else in the office,
Right.
right? So HR can be that ear for you if you really do need to just sometimes vent and to share
Mm-hmm.
some of the things that are going on with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for being with us. Thank you for
Oh, thank
joining us
you. I
on
had so
this
much
program.
fun.
And I would love to have you back, especially when we start the program on Q95 as well, because I
Thank you.
actually am an associate professor of industrial organizational psychology. So we're pretty much along the same line because I teach the psychology of work. So I teach motivation, leadership, all the wonderful topics that you cover.
Yeah,
So I'm looking forward to collaborating with you
I will
so
be
that
happy to.
we can assist our community
Yeah.
and kind of highlight for them the important role of HR and how HR can benefit them. So do you have any final words as we get ready to wind up the program today?
Oh my gosh, I had such a good time. Thank you
Oh,
so much.
thank
This
you.
is this is what I love to do. I literally love to do HR work. I mean, it's in my blood, it's in my genes.
Mm-hmm.
And so if anybody has any questions for me, they certainly can send me a message via Facebook. I will be happy to respond.
Mm-hmm.
I just love what I do, and I thank you so much for inviting me. I love the work that you're doing. Kudos,
Thank
kudos,
you.
kudos to your
Thank
new
you.
gig.